Welcome. My name is Luke Scott III. I'm here with the Vegan Organic Network, and we have a really special interview for you today with Joe Kidd from Tree of Life Veganics. And Joe has set up this project and is showing the world that it is possible to create high quality produce in a fully veganic way. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Joe to the show. And she's also here with Terry as well. And Joe says that Terry is super smart and he's here to answer any questions about technical engineering stuff. So no pressure, Terry. We'll fire the hard questions at you, hey?
Okay.
How are we doing?
Hey.
How is life at Tree of Life Veganics?
Life is good. Yeah, life is good. We're enjoying the good weather. Yeah, thank you. Just to say, we both set up the project. So myself and Terry, we've just got my name there, but it's the two of us, and also Rosa, our daughter, who's lurking around as well. He might join us at some point. Oh, immediately. There you go.
Hi, Rosa.
And obviously lots of other people in the community. So yeah, we've got different kind of bits of expertise and things that we know about. So.
That's brilliant. I absolutely love that you're doing it as a family as well. I think that's fantastic. And how has it been starting a veganic project? Has it been smooth sailing, sunshine and rainbows, or have there been some challenging times?
Both. Yeah, there's been plenty of challenges. Yeah, but mostly I think, you know, mostly what we've done has worked and has been, in a way, you know, we've kind of surprised ourselves, because it's not farming in this way is not our background. Certainly not my background. I haven't come from a farming background. Terry was on a small holding, and I lived on a small holding, but it was very different to what we're doing now. So we've only been, you know, here since 2018. Yeah. So, you know, I think in terms of the balance of things that have worked well, things that, you know, lovely things that have happened, people that have helped us, all the positives have definitely outweighed the challenges. We can go into the challenges if you like, or we can just avoid talking about them. It's up to you.
We'll dive into those for sure. I mean, the intention here is we want to inspire people to see that veganic is possible, right? And that it's something that is doable, that, you know, you're doing this with, you said, very limited experience. I remember I saw an interview with you on the Vegan Organic Network about 2 years ago. I think at that time you said you were just a couple of years into the project. So it's kind of nice catching up now, kind of 2 years later, and see where you've got. I guess for anybody who doesn't know about Tree of Life Veganics, do you want to tell them a bit about your project, what it is, how big it is, what kind of stuff you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start and then pass over to you for other bits, shall I? We're in East Kent, which we're in Bourton at the moment, Bourton-under-Blean, near Faversham, East Kent. And we're actually, as Dan knows, we're in the process of having to move. That's been one of the challenges, which we can go into a bit if you like. But so we're leasing where we are, and we're moving to a site that we've now bought. So we're going to be much more secure, which is great. And we're on 5.6 hectares, so we're pretty small but big enough for us. And we're moving. Where we're moving, we've bought just over 4.5 hectares, and but we'll be farming on about 6, so it's a similar kind of size. Yeah, and I say we've been here since 2018. Obviously, all completely veganic. We're aiming to be 100% agroforestry, so we've, you know, call ourselves a forest farm, and also no plough, and aiming to be no till as well, and also off grid, which Terry can talk a bit more about, because that's his kind of background, is engineering, agricultural engineering, and green building and all that kind of thing. So
is the secret that everybody needs a Terry, basically? Is that how you make these things
lots
work?
of people say that. It's funny, that, isn't it?
I don't think so. I think it's handy to have, because that's what I do. You find the geeks. I'm not quite a geek, but you find the geek of the little individual bits that you need to do, and then luckily most of them love imparting information. They're not like people who are in it for profit. They're in it for the knowledge and the dissemination of knowledge. So once you find them, you sort of hone in on them for that. But yeah, so I've sort of come in handy in knowing each of those, which is quite useful. And then, yeah, it's lucky to be able to weld and fabricate and create and draw most of the things you're going to build, for sure. So help.
And Rosa, what do you really love about Tree of Life Veganics? Is there some things that you're really getting good at and that you like helping with?
I sometimes help you, don't I?
You help me quite often, yeah.
Sometimes. And then
Look just slightly off the screen there, look. There you go. What have you helped me with then in the past?
Planting stuff, like squashes and stuff like that.
Trees, you've helped with planting trees.
Yeah.
I've got pictures of her pushing wheelbarrows of wood chip around. All sorts
Okay,
of
so you're getting strong as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I remember as well, you don't use any single-use plastics. That's kind of a part of your ethos, wasn't it? And you sell your produce locally too. Is that still how you're doing things?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we've done some heritage wheat, which we've sold locally, very locally, a couple of miles away to a local vegan-run sourdough bakehouse. And another friend as well who makes sourdough and pizza in Canterbury. And then we've sold some of our veg to a local farm shop. Again, it's only 2 miles away, and another place in Canterbury. But also, as I say, because we're moving, like there's quite a lot of things in transition and a few things in limbo. So we haven't been able to get as far along the kind of processing side, if you like, the stuff that's higher value, which will actually, bring in a good income. Until we move, really, and we can build our barns. We've got the kind of planning in place to put. Oh, sorry, Rosa's off again. Planning in place to build our barns, and so we can start processing. And the plan is really to be a kind of minimum amount of processing, really. But things like, growing nuts, so a lot of top fruit. So we're growing hazels and walnuts and chestnuts, and then some other more kind of unusual nuts in a food forest. In a food forest kind of system. And then so looking at oil with nuts and flour, that kind of thing, so milling and producing cold pressing, producing oil. And then also top fruit, so we're looking at juices, and then also looking at plant milks, so hopefully things like hemp, oat and hazelnuts, and maybe sunflower. We seem very good at growing sunflowers, or the sunflowers seem to be very good at growing themselves. So we're looking at something a bit different like that. And then other things like dried fruits. We've got a lot of mulberries that since we've learned that we had to move, we've been moving trees. So basically the crop trees that we planted here where we are, we've had to uproot and move those. So we've got so far 32 mulberries, 50 odd hazels, then we've got sweet chestnut and walnut. So you've gone off screen now, Luke. I hope you're still there.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. I am still here, definitely.
I thought we'd lost you for a minute. I thought, oh no, we're just talking to ourselves.
I am here. So even though you've only been doing this since 2018, it sounds like you've got a lot of stuff going on, and you've had great success with your growing too. I know we met at the Vegan Organic Festival a few years ago. And I'm a big advocate of the Vegan Organic Network. I'm fully ethical vegan. I think it's the future. And I do meditation. And in my meditation just last week, I channeled this thing that in 5 years that the vegan organic will be the dominant food production on the planet. And what a beautiful vision that would be if 51% or more of the food on the planet is vegan organic in the next 5 years. And I think so many people care. And people like you who are pioneering this, and I know there's some people who've been doing this for 20 years in the UK, right? And I've interviewed them before. The more of us who can do this and show that it's possible, instead of these big industrial farms and factory farms for animals and for fruits and vegetables, they're both damaging, right? I think if we can have more of these growers who do exactly what you're doing, we can really change the whole world. So hats off to you. And for anybody who is thinking about doing it, maybe they have an idea, maybe they're not sure where to get started, what do you suggest for those people?
I think, as we were talking about earlier, when before we started, it is possible to do this. I think people see it as a very, well, it is, and we need a land. Let's not mess about. We need a land revolution, don't we? The way that land is controlled, in the same way that capital is controlled, is just immoral, and it's in the hands of a few. And those few generally aren't doing what they should be doing with the land. It's not being treated in the way it should be. So, as you say, Luke, the small scale farming, the kind of stuff that we're trying to do, that people like Tolly, as you say, been doing for decades, and other small veganic farmers and growers around the country. And then people like Martin Crawford, in the West Country, who's really pioneering and showing what can be done in terms of agroforestry and food forests. And then people like Graham, Graham Burnett, and others who've been talking about this for a long time. I think it is possible, and people shouldn't be put off by the fact that the planning system, and capitalism is set against what we're trying to do, because what we're trying to show that it is possible. We're in Kent, probably one of the most expensive parts of the country, and we're going through the process of the planning applications and the finding the land, making those connections with the local people, building community, building bridges with people so that people trust us. We're doing it in a way that it's by the book, if you like. So I think what we'd like to show people is that can be done, and that just go for it and try it. Talk to local people where you are, local farmers, local landowners. Find pieces of land that need caring for, that need a bit of love. Club together with other people, but we'd always be happy to talk to people about the process and what we've gone through. And, as I say, the majority of that being positive, and how we've overcome those challenges, really.
Yeah, it's one of the things I really love. Everybody who I've met so far at the Vegan Organic Network, all of the growers and all of the people in the team, we want to support each other. There's none of this idea that we're in competition and, we don't want others to do it. It's like, no, please, like as many people as possible, let's come and let's all grow. And that is a whole different way of being, isn't it? It's a lot more conscious and very beautiful, I think, compared to some of the other farmers who have to be so competitive because they're squeezed by the supermarkets and different things. And it's exactly like you said, we need a food revolution, a land revolution. And yeah, we're doing it in 5 years for that to be the dominant food production on the planet. Like, I don't know exactly what we need to do that, but it's thousands of people doing projects similar to yours just in the UK, and that would be a great start. So educating people is one of the most important things, I believe. And when I met Dan from the Vegan Organic Network, I met him at an animal rights activism event, and then he told me that most of the vegan food I buy in supermarkets is grown in animal produce. It's grown with blood and bone and all of this stuff, and I was horrified. And most people I know who are even ethical vegan, they don't know what happens when how their food is grown, especially in these big industrial places. What's your message, I guess, for anyone who is tuning into this, who's maybe a bit newer to vegan organic? Why was that so important to you?
To be veganic, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. For us, I think I'll let Terry say something as well in a minute. But for us, there's no option. That's the only way. We've been vegan we actually went vegan to come together when we got married. It was like an agreement, as part of the marriage. So 20 odd years we've been vegan, and this is really the next logical step, really. Is as you say, you find out gradually, about we're vegan, for the animals initially, but then you find out about all the other stuff that it just once you start looking, then it kind of all opens up, doesn't it? And you can't unknow that and unsee that stuff. So to be veganic, organic, as you say, organic farming is, I don't know, it's just taken so long, isn't it, for people to get it? And now there's more stuff, kind of a bit like fair trade, really. It took a long time, but now it seems to be rolling forward. And there's more stuff in the shops. But it's still, you know, organic farming still allows a certain amount of chemicals, apart from all the slaughterhouse byproducts and the factory farm byproducts, you know, all that manure. Where does that go from all those poor animals who are being treated in that disgusting way? So I think, you know, to just think about the animals and then think about being close to the earth and the land and how, you know, we're part of nature and we want to be able to give back more than we take, then veganic's the only way. And it just makes sense in terms of, I don't know, everything, you know, kind of karma, if you like. I suppose it's just it's hard work, yeah, but less hard work, I think, when you're working in harmony with the earth than it is when you're fighting against and trying to force something to grow where it doesn't want to grow, or, you know, chucking chemicals everywhere, or all those embedded costs, you know, make things a lot harder when you're not doing it the veganic way.
How about you, Terry? Imagine it's a lot of early mornings and late nights and sweat and blood and tears and all of it. And what keeps you going? Why is this really important for you?
It's not as bad as we like to think, because we have the pleasure of the outdoors. So what more could one ask for, really? So you're enjoying the veganic side and the countryside at the same time. So it's not bad. But going back to the earlier question of why and what can people do, one of the first things I think a lot of people need to do, especially where we are, it might be different where you are, is trying to retain the good farmland that we've got, and then we can transition that to veganic. If we can't retain it, it's gone already. And a big issue for us here is large landowners. And one of those at the moment is the Duchy of Cornwall. And he's thinking of building 2,500 houses on grade 1 agricultural land. Now that's sacrilege. It shouldn't even be happening. It shouldn't even be thought of being created. So I think a lot of us need to get involved on a lot of ground root stuff, and get involved in campaigning against house building and expansion of people within Kent. We're 5 times over the saturation point for food production. So it means already we've got to import most of our food, and that needs to end for any sort of food security. And so part of what keeps us going is that thought of food security. If you were running a veganic system, food security is much, much better. You're running a varied and diverse form of growing. Therefore, if something fails, you've always got something else that you can feed people with. Currently, under the monocrop system, that doesn't happen. So therefore, to try and protect that, as you know, they had to defend it with a massive amount of chemicals and inputs. So again, it puts the expense up and puts an impact on a different part of the planet for products that we can't produce. So that's sort of that part for me. And then going back to the part where we were talking about why, for me, the veganic journey started when working on a small holding. You have to kill your animals, and it's never pleasant. And no one, in my eyes, this is one of my reasons for going vegan, should have to be forced to kill someone. And so for me, having briefly been in an abattoir, no one should have to do that job. It's just not necessary. And it's unkind to say, oh, it's my choice to eat meat. No, it's not. Someone else has got to go and do that job for you. You're not going to go and do it. So that was one of my reasonings, having come from that environment. And veganic growing encompasses it, and it just becomes a kind thing to do. If anything, you get more and more stressed, because as the characters that you see get smaller and smaller as you become, vegan for longer and longer. But I won't digress on that one. I've forgotten what the original question was now. Sorry, I got sidetracked.
You're doing great. You're doing great, Terry. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? We got some land, one of my friends, and we were looking at, okay, how do we grow on this veganically? So we're looking at the no dig method, and then we started going, okay, so what do we do about slugs now? And so they do get smaller and smaller and smaller, the animals that you start to think about. What do we do about the worms? Like, how do we take care of all of the different butterflies? And, it's a really beautiful journey, isn't it, when you start diving into it and just having more and more compassion for all the different aspects of this beautiful world that we live in.
Yeah, I think I think that's where I kind of came from, is I've always felt that, and I don't know where that came from originally, but that connection with, every other creature on the planet. So when I was a little girl, I remember saving worms, you know, and making sure the ants could get past without being trodden on. And you know, we continue to do that. And I think when, you know, you're farming in a massive way with big machinery, you don't see any of that destruction and those people being suffering and being killed, you know. So but when you're doing things slowly and you know, thoughtfully, mindfully and close to the earth, then you can be more careful. And I think, you know, it's like the whole anti-growth movement, you know, the degrowth movement. They're thinking that actually it's not about increasing yields and economic growth and more and more and more. We need to consume more. Actually, we need to just do less and be slower and more mindful. And you know, it doesn't mean that we're all going to go back to the dark ages, which is what some of the, you know, the kind of people who don't, I don't know what you call them really, but people who don't get this kind of stuff think. It's not about that. It's not about getting rid of all technology and machinery, but it's just about slowing down and having more time to realize our connection, you know, with the rest of nature. So it is, for me, it's a very spiritual thing as well, a bit like you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I became vegan. That's why I started on this path. I got this big connection, this spiritual awakening. And before that, I was totally not on that path. I was very selfish. I just ate whatever I wanted and did whatever I wanted. And thankfully now I've become softer and slower and more gentle and more thoughtful and more aware. And it's been beautiful, peeling all the layers and layers and layers. So you are 4 years-ish into this project. What would you say to people who are just getting started? Like, what are the key things you've learned? Maybe some of the challenges you've had to overcome, some of the things that you maybe would have done differently with the power of hindsight. What advice can you give to people who are maybe thinking about starting some kind of project like this?
Shall I have a go?
I think Terry I can hear him.
I'll have a go. I was thinking, I think one of the things we learned was your land security. It's horrible to have to think that you have to own land, because I wouldn't like to say that is necessary, but be very sure of the security of tenure of what you're going to work, the land you're going to work, so then you don't have to do it twice. That would be one thing. And hopefully, you know, you end up with philanthropic landlords if they're nice, you know, and they own a lot of land. Hopefully they'll give you long-term rental. If at any point at the beginning someone says, oh, we'll give it 2 years and see how it goes, I wouldn't even enter into it. Don't bother doing anything short term and see how it goes, because it's their mindset is thinking, well, actually, maybe I'll change my mind. Whereas if they've listened to you and you've given a good presentation of what you want to do and they like the idea, why wouldn't they invest in you for 10 years or 15 years or 25 years? And that would be one of the first things, especially here where land prices and competitiveness for other uses is very, very high. It might be different in other parts of the country. Other thing would be plan out what you want to do and how you want to do it. Do you want to be fully off grid? If that's the case, the first thing you're going to need is water. So think, where's my water going to come from? How am I going to store it? How am I going to use it? And then second to that will be energy. How can you what energy are you going to use and in what form? Obviously, I imagine most people who want to go to a low carbon system, probably mostly electric. Brilliantly, that's really moved on in the last 10 years. So we've gone from really poor efficiencies of, down in the 8-12% for solar now, and we're now up to sort of 21-22%. So it's so cost effective to go off grid. It's more cost effective than getting a grid connection. And that's even exacerbated with the current Tory greed regarding our energy problem. They're probably the three things I would think about. And then Joe will probably then give you an idea on soils and thinking about that. I'll let Joe explain that bit. Walking and knowing the bit of land that you're going to start on. Don't rush into it. Go and have a look at it and get a feel for it and see what grows and doesn't grow and how it grows and how they interact with each other. And then that'll give you a good idea of what will probably work there longer term. But Joe will explain that better than I think. So
I don't know. I'm not a soil scientist. It's all we're both on a learning curve with lots of different things. But I think it's about it's about community as well. So it's about you'll kind of know where something feels right, you know, where a place feels right, if you've got a particular connection to a place, or you know, it's also about knowing that community. So getting to know, I know lots of people are moving to certain parts of the world because it's cheaper and it's easier, and maybe the planning laws are different. But I think if you've got real connection, almost, you know, you can almost meditate, as you were saying, Luke, meditate with that land or with those trees, or, you know, and ask, you know, and you might get some really interesting answers back to where you feel you should be. So it's not always about just finding the cheapest place and the easiest place. And I remember someone asking in an interview once, Graham Burnett, where, you know, what's the best kind of land? What kind of land should I find for doing my veganic permaculture, you know, food forest? And he said, just find the land that needs the most care, what, you know, that you've got a connection to, but that needs the most love and care. And that's where you need to start, really, because that's, you know, there's just so much damage that we've done, as humans have done, and so much that needs to come back from that. So yeah, so I would say, you know, those things really. Get to know people locally, so that you're not just kind of helicoptering yourself in somewhere and you know, no one knows who you are and what are they up to, you know, and there's, you know, lots of suspicion. But talk to people and get to know them and find out what people are interested in. And we've, you know, that's what we found here. And hopefully when we move, it's not very far away where we're going, but it's still a different village. You know, where we've been very open, and we know lots of people in the area, and lots of people have got involved and come along to events and community tree planting and have really supported us. So, you know, that's really, really positive. And you don't always hear that about land projects, let's be honest. It's quite often, you know, battles that people are having, but mostly, you know, apart from this issue of having to move, but that wasn't a conflict. That was just a landowner changing their mind about what they wanted the land for. Otherwise, it's been very, you know, very positive, really.
It's a fascinating concept to move your trees as well. I know in Japan, when they do construction work, they move the trees. They don't kill the trees, and it's a whole, because they believe the tree is a sacred thing, right? And so it's a very different way to how maybe we do it here in the West, or how most people do it. And maybe in the future, people will care more, and you know, it is very possible to transport trees and things like that, right? So I love that you're doing that.
It wasn't a tree surgeon, it was actually a local authority, what they called, tree officer, I think. So when I said about, you know, the fact we're moving trees, just kind of laughed and said, not going to do, that's not going to work, they're not going to survive, you know. And actually they all have, and they're all thriving. And I think, you know, I kind of did a little blessing and a little prayer for each tree. We dug them up and transported them to the new site, and they're all thriving. Maybe, you know, realize that they're now safe and like the new soil, slightly different soil up there. So, you know, who knows? But it's definitely worked and is working.
Little adventure for them. It's quite exciting, eh? Yeah,
exactly.
I love that.
Yeah, when we first learned and we had to move, you know, I just sobbed. I was just sobbing, you know, after thinking about all the work and the connection we'd already made with this land and with the humans around here. So, you know, so it was a kind of big emotional deal. But actually, to then go back and think, actually, no, we're still working with the land in a different place, and we're going to connect even more deeply with the trees and the plants and the animals that are around us. So it's good.
Love that. And as you are working so closely with the land for, you know, a number of years now, there's this concept, some people call it the Tao or the flow of energy. It's like you learn to live in, you said, harmony, right, with the energies. And when it's time to go, it's time to go, right? The birds know when to migrate, and they migrate, you know, and they do. And we all kind of end up where we're supposed to be, right? If we follow that guidance and that wisdom. And just reflecting on Rosa, how beautiful that must be for her to have this as a part of her upbringing. And we talked to, hey Rosa, And I have a 2-year-old, so I would love for her to get experience of growing. We have land in Mexico. We bought land. We're building out there. We've got 130 acres. We've got 30 families, and we're starting a project. And we've got land to grow on, and we're hoping we can make a good go of it.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. We're just talking about Mexico yesterday. We'll have to come and visit, Luke.
Yeah, please. Well, come and give us all your wisdom. That'll be great. And so we're just figuring all of that out right now. And we talked a little bit about 5 years' time, but we can even zoom out a little bit further. So I was talking with my wife yesterday about what the world might be like in 30 years' time. So in 30 years' time, when Rosa's our age, like what do you think the world can be like?
That's very kind.
Do you think vegan organic can be the way that most of the world grow their food, and that we live in this kind of harmonious way? Do you believe that's possible?
Rosa's nodding.
Rosa does.
Rosa's going to make it happen. I like that.
Yeah. I think it's definitely possible. People are just, there's just so much going on with the veganic movement, but even wider with just kind of regenerative and regenerative growing and farming in the real sense. What we mean by regenerative, giving back more than you take, not how it's been hijacked. There's just so much going on. People are just, waking up and realizing that this system that we've grown up with, most of us have been forced to grow up with, is just coming to an end. We're seeing it collapsing all around us, aren't we? All the time. It's just crazy stuff going on. And then kind of in a way, the worse it gets, the more people will wake up. But let's hope that people wake up before then, because we don't want more people to suffer, and that's what's happening. So I just think, it has to be the future. We wouldn't be doing it if we didn't believe that it's the future, and you just kind of have to really just connect with all those other good things that are happening, and that will kind of, it's ripples, isn't it? Like you say, it's it'll grow quicker then.
I think also I think we'll gain more roads from understanding traditions of farming. Having come from the background of farming, they're very, very traditionalist, and that's the shackles of progression. But if we can try and understand why people really cling on to certain ways of life, and they'll defend them tooth and nail, even though they know in the back of their mind it's not the right thing to do and it's not kind. But it's also trying to understand, to give up a tradition is like saying the whole of my past and my relatives were wrong. And that, I know that. So it's very hard to do. So we've got to have a sympathetic ear. We've got to have empathy to that to be able to progress forward. Otherwise, it's just going to keep being a constant conflict. So if we can transition somehow into them being able to keep some of that tradition as it moves forward, even though part of it is, as people said, veganic growing is like moving backwards, really, in that it's ideally it'd be small holdings and small pockets. But as we were saying, we don't, not embrace technology. We think it's a good thing, and if we think, in the right place, it's great for us to all move forward. So how can we integrate that in part of the traditions of traditional farming? So then we can enable them not to be so fearful about change, because a lot of the big monoculture guys we talk to want change, and they get organic, but they're so fearful of giving up the high input standard system that they've done for 3 or 4 or 5 generations. So that's the tricky bit. I think we've got to try and sort of work through.
Not even that long, really, is it? Because it's only post-war that's
but it's still
changed.
Sort of 3 or 4 generations of them.
I always forget how long ago that is. I always think we're still in the year 2000. But I think you're right. I think that there's a lot that we can learn from traditional farming. Not just in this country, but we look at the kind of one straw revolution stuff. In Japan and obviously things that indigenous people are doing and still doing. Done and are still doing and can teach us. But also even in this country, if we can make it's looking for those threads, isn't it? So that as you say, you don't just create conflict and it's us and them and build barriers, but we want, as vegans, it's part of what we're doing, isn't it, is we want more people to feel that same love and compassion as we do. So you have to kind of understand why people are where they are, but at the same time, not make excuses either, you know, and be radical. We need radicals in this world, but we need compassionate radicals who are, going to try and find where those bridges are and make those connections with people. And there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to learn from. I remember I was watching this thing, which was really useful because I was looking at trying to process different ideas about processing food. It was something like Second World War Britain, farming in, you know, during the war or something like that. And it was just showing all the different techniques in terms of farming, and it was all very small scale during the war, you know, smaller scale. It was multi-cropping, you know, it was using green manures. It was all those things that we're kind of doing really. So yeah, there's loads that we can learn from previous generations. Let's get rid of all the chemicals and all the monoculture.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you're doing, which is really great, we can do things on the individual level, like inspiring individual farmers. I was hanging out with an amazing farmer who was in the documentary called 73 Cows that won a BAFTA. He's called Jay, and you know, his was a battle of consciousness. He had these cows, and then one day he just broke down, took them to slaughter, and broke down. You know, couldn't do that anymore. And now he's looking at turning his farm into a veganic farm, which is, you know, fantastic, doing things on that individual level. I think also if we can do things on the systems level, that's going to be a huge part too. So I interviewed somebody recently. They help farmers to become stock free, and they were talking about the subsidies that farmers receive. It's like 2 billion or 3 billion pounds a year goes to these dairy farmers and meat farmers, because over 80% of them are not making profit. They actually make a deficit every year, and it's only the government subsidies that actually keeps them in business. That's, if the government stopped their subsidies, they would lose money. And so it's not even profitable the way they're doing things. So I think people like yourself who hopefully can show, look, this is sustainable, this is profitable, it's good for the planet, it's good for our health, it's good for our family unit. I think there's a huge thing we can do there. And if by the power of, you know, whatever influence whoever is watching this has, if we can do things on the individual level and change at the systems level, Joe, Terry, can you imagine what would happen if the government gave that 2 billion or 3 billion pounds to the Vegan Organic Network?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry, you're right in thinking about, you know, how kind of modern farmers are actually struggling and can't make a profit without subsidies. Just thinking about, for example, around here, there's a lot. I mean, it's supposed to be the Garden of England, but you know, as Terry pointed out, it's being concreted over very rapidly. But actually, there's a lot of grain grown and a lot of cereals grown around here. But actually, 80% in this country, 80% of our cereals are fed to farmed animals. So when people see that and they don't understand the system, you know, the farming system and how it works, they just think, oh, but we're growing all this wheat and all these oats and all, you know, it's all being, how are we going to feed the world if we don't do that? But we're not. We're feeding those are going to feed farmed animals, you know, and we're importing in the Garden of England. We're importing at least 50% of our apples, for example. It's just, as you say, the system is just, it's not broke because it's working very well for those elite, you know, people at the top controlling it all, but it's broke for the rest of us. So, yeah, sorry, I interrupted. You were going to say something.
No, I've forgotten what I was going to say. I forgot. Oh, it was just a point. A little factual note where Luke had mentioned about subsidies is that I wouldn't want to jump the gun and say we're profitable, but it might be in about 5 years' time. But to break that down into percentage terms, it was good because we were just looking after reading about. I got into quite a dialogue about sheep farming in Upper Wales, and George Monbiot touched on it with sheep wrecking. And it was interesting to note, having now done the works, because we also run a forestry business as well, is that currently there, as you know, sheep farming isn't profitable. And when we calculated it, it's actually 50% more profitable to turn that land to forestry, if not just used, obviously mustn't be used as a fuel. We need to transition ourselves away from imported timber for building. Because at the moment we import 90% of our building timber. That's ridiculous. And that only happened in the last, it sounds a short time, but it is in the world, 150 years ago. And then we shifted to this softwood timber, which was easy to calculate and cheaper to bring in. Whereas now we could move out of that, and especially as a positive note, if there is such a thing on Brexit, in theory, we could regulate that ourselves and grow at least 90% of our timber instead of 10% of our timber. And that would then make it a closed loop circle for CO2 and pollutants, because we'd then be locking in that timber and using it for building rather than burning it. And then obviously it then regrows. So if we go back to a deciduous coppice woodland scheme, especially on the mid and lower levels and some of the upper levels of Wales, Scotland and West Country, we could then obviously save ourselves money and make ourselves more sustainable. And it is completely doable. We're actually doing that ourselves as well. So we wanted to show those sort of models in a micro level. So if anyone wants to, come and have a visit and have a chat, we can show them. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love that. Really amazing. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you both today. Hopefully we've inspired some people. I guess the people who are watching, some of them might be growers already. Some of them might be aspiring growers. Some of them might just love the vegan organic produce. And some of them might be curious on that path. Joe, Terry, is there anything you want to share with everybody before we wrap up today? Is there anything that you want to cover that you think could really help people?
I'll let Joe go first.
I think you obviously had something that was burning. Go for it.
No, it's only that it is fun. It is fun. And if anything, the vegan transition, if you hadn't transitioned to vegan, once you start, Luke knows, it just becomes more enjoyable. And it isn't a task, and it isn't stressful, because in fact, the only thing that's stressful is you wish you'd done it longer ago. Yeah. You wish you'd done it earlier. You wish you knew more. So, and there's lots of support now. I'm overwhelmed by the speed that it's expanding at, and the amount of dissemination of information due to the internet. It's great. And if you want to have a go at growing, it's not that stressful because it's done at a leisurely pace. Plants don't grow that fast, so it's quite nice. Enjoy it. That's what I'd say. Is it has its moments, but you're outdoors. The weather's great. It's getting warmer. Not that that's a good thing, but there we are.
It's getting stormier.
I
think just do it. Do it is my advice, really, because as Terry said, we're in our 50s now, and it's fine. We're healthy and fit, and we're getting on with it. We're active. But I wish I'd known all this stuff when I was younger. Everyone says that about everything, don't they? Probably, but you wish with hindsight and all the rest of it.
I think someone's jesting that I'm not fit.
Oh, right. I thought she was laughing about our ages.
You look great to me, Terry. You look fantastic.
He's hiding his bald head with his hat.
Yeah,
just do it. Just find out. Just talk to other people. Talk to other people like us and other people who've been doing it for longer, and get support from the Vegan Organic Network. There's funding there as well in different places. There's information that we can give about planning and funding and the kind of processes. But just if you're thinking about it, stop thinking about it. Just do it.
Yeah, and definitely for me, if you know any farmers that are struggling right now and they're open to looking at other ways. So I have a farmer friend who's in Ireland. They have huge grazing land in Ireland, and it's not doing anything. And they were like, yeah, tell me what we can do. Like, we're open. It's just sat there. It's doing nothing. What can we do? And if you know those kind of farmers, do put them in touch with the Vegan Organic Network. Let's help them to figure out a plan and transition. And if we can do that, we can really snowball this thing. And there's even one person I was speaking to in Scotland. They have grants if you rewild your fields, which is fantastic. There's lots of different things that we can do. And I really like this idea as well, that we're starting to get rewards for people who take care of the planet better. And I think as we all evolve in our consciousness as a collective, as a human race, we start to become more aware. Hopefully, these companies that are damaging the earth, they'll start getting more penalties, and it will just make sense, because we can appeal to people spiritually. Well, a lot of people, they care about financially, right? So like we said, if we can shift these subsidies, if we can make it really easy for farmers to move and have these more sustainable ways, we can change the whole world. And maybe when Rosa is in 30 years' time, people will go, what? You used to have industrial farms? You used to do monocropping? That's so strange.
Yeah.
Like that film Carnage, isn't it? You know, I can't remember the comedian's name. We did the film about how it would be in 50 years' time. Everyone's vegan. It's a vegan world.
Simon Amstel's film.
Simon Amstel, well done. And you're looking back, and there's all these people our kind of age, you're all in therapy because of what they used to do. And so, and we know, things have shifted so quickly in the last 5 years, 10 years, and take all the whole pandemic out of it. But, that it all shifted the vegan movement, the kind of being more mainstream. So this just needs to kind of follow behind, and we need the things like elms, which we're hoping still is going to go through, but who knows with the turmoil that is the Tory party at the moment, what will happen there. But I think that was a positive step forward in terms of the subsidy system with the environmental land management scheme. And there's lots of other pressure moving in that direction. But what we need also is a law of ecocide. That's the thing that you're talking about there, Luke, is where the polluter pays, the proper real principle of the polluter pays, where the damage is done. That is against the law, and you're going to be taken to court over that. And in some parts of the world that's happening, that in South America, particularly Central South America, you probably know Mexico is one of those places that has been at the forefront. People like Cesar Chavez, I don't know if he's not around now, but if you've looked into any of the stuff that he did, it's amazing. It's an amazing person with agricultural workers' rights and land rights, in Mexico. So there's lots of places where we can learn from what other people have done and are doing.
And it is going back to a bit of party politics, because part of that is that if we can change the system very hard, we can all do our bit on the ground. But also if we make an effort to think, who's got policies to do this? Who's got policies to create some of these changes? Unfortunately, it's sadly that most of the main groups haven't, but the Green Party's definitely got some policies for that. So hopefully people can think, who can give us these answers? Who's got some thoughts on this for the future? Who's got a long-term sustainable view? And at the moment, I can only see that the Green Party has. Not promoting them here, but maybe I am. But I think we could do that. We can all make a choice there and we vote. So, and that's got to help things.
There's benefits in everything. So right now there's turmoil in the political world, which is hopefully making everybody question the political system. I'm a big believer in sovereignty. That's what we teach at our events. We want to help more people do exactly like you're doing, get off grid, grow their own food, be in community, live close to the land, heal themselves without hospitals, all the good stuff. And so we can all thrive. Joe, Terry, thank you so much. Rosa, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. If anybody wants to reach out, you can find them Tree of Life Veganics. Is there any way for people to get in touch, Joe, Terry, if they want to reach you?
Yeah, we're on Instagram and Facebook. So it's just at Tree of Life Veganics. Or via that you can email me, joe@treeoflifeveganics.org. Yeah.
Fantastic. And a huge shout out as well to the Vegan Organic Network. Everybody head over to veganorganic.net. Get your subscription to the Vegan Organic Network. It is amazing. You'll get your magazines. You'll get to help all these different growers, and you'll get to learn loads too. And there is loads of info on the Vegan Organic Network website. So go and check it out. Thank you all so much, and good luck on all of your projects.
Good luck, everyone. Go for it.
Such a beautiful place.
We need to interview you next, Luke, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone, I'm sure someone has, but it sounds like there's loads there. I think we'll do a swap.
I'm in. You can interview me anytime.
Thanks, Luke. Take
Cheerio.
care.
Bye.
Bye.